What would you do if the quiet kid everyone picked on, the one who spent his lunch breaks alone, suddenly appeared on every screen in the country, performing a feat that defied explanation? And what if, as the world watched, you realized he was the only one who could save a life hanging in the balance, a life you inadvertently put at risk? The smell of stale gym socks and overcooked pizza hung heavy in the air of Northwood Middle School. It was the kind of Friday afternoon that dragged, every second a slow tick toward freedom. Most kids were roughhousing by the lockers, but one wasn't. He sat hunched on a bench near the emergency exit, meticulously drawing in a worn sketchbook. His name was Leo Hayes, new to Northwood, and seemingly new to fitting in. His clothes were hand-me-downs, a size too big, and his sneakers, though clean, were scuffed. A mop of untamed brown hair fell over his eyes, making him seem even more withdrawn. He didn't speak much, didn't make eye contact, just sat there, a silent fixture in the chaotic halls. Across the hall, Jake Miller, captain of the junior varsity basketball team and king of the lunchroom, leaned against the lockers with his usual smirk. His designer sneakers squeaked on the linoleum as he bounced a basketball, drawing the attention of his eager audience. Mark and Tiffany, his ever-present sidekicks. Jake had money. You could see it in his perfectly coiffed hair, his brand-new phone, and the effortless way he commanded a room. But today, he looked restless, bored, itching for a target. And Leo, the quiet new kid, was an easy one. "Hey, sketchbook," Jake called out, his voice cutting through the chatter. Leo flinched, his pencil freezing mid-stroke. He didn't look up. "Heard you were at the park yesterday," Jake continued, a sneer forming. "What? Practicing your hide-and-seek skills." Mark and Tiffany snickered on cue. Leo stayed silent, his face flushing. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just shy about your secret superhero identity?" Jake took a step closer, flicking the corner of Leo's sketchbook. "Come on, give us a show, Leo. Do your little thing." Leo finally looked up, his eyes wide and a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. "Leave me alone, Jake," he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. Jake laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. "Oh, now he talks. See, guys? We just have to encourage him." He snatched the sketchbook from Leo's lap. "What's in here anyway?" "Your diary of how lonely you are." Before Leo could react, Jake flipped through the pages, revealing intricate, almost glowing drawings of cityscapes, but with an unusual addition: swirling patterns of energy, like invisible currents made visible. "Whoa, what is this junk?" Jake scoffed, about to rip a page when a flash of movement caught his eye. A small, anxious squirrel, probably disoriented from getting into the school, darted out from behind a vending machine, heading straight for the open emergency exit door and the busy street beyond. Jake, still holding the sketchbook, instinctively pivoted to block the squirrel, more out of desire to show off than genuine concern. But as he moved, his foot slipped on a discarded soda can. He staggered, losing his balance, and the basketball he was still holding flew from his grasp. It soared toward the emergency exit, hitting the crash bar with a loud bang just as a maintenance worker, distracted by a conversation on his walkie-talkie, was pushing a heavy cart through the doorway. The door swung open violently. The cart caught the edge, and a stack of metal shelving units on top, precariously balanced, began to topple. Time seemed to slow. The shelves, heavy and sharp, were falling directly toward the worker, who, still focused on his walkie-talkie, was oblivious. Kid screamed. Jake froze, the sketchbook forgotten in his hand, his face paling as he understood the immediate, dire consequence of his accidental action. But then Leo moved, not with speed, but with an odd, fluid grace. He wasn't running to the worker, but positioning himself. He dropped his pen, raised both hands, and a faint, almost invisible shimmer emanated from his palms. The air around the falling shelves seemed to bend, a subtle distortion, like heat rising off asphalt. The metal units, instead of crashing down, shifted, gently guiding themselves around the worker, narrowly missing him by inches, before settling on the floor with a much softer clatter than anyone expected. The worker, startled by the noise, finally looked up, bewildered. Silence descended. Everyone stared at Leo, his hands still raised, his eyes fixed on the now safe worker. Jake, his jaw hanging open, looked from the uninjured worker to Leo, then down at the sketchbook still clutched in his hand. On the open page, one of the swirling energy patterns perfectly matched the invisible force that had just intervened. The school bell shrieked, signaling the end of the day, but no one moved. Jake felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He hadn't just seen a weird kid. He'd seen something impossible. And then his phone buzzed. It was his mom. "Jake, get home. Turn on the news. It's everywhere." As the local news anchor's face filled the screen, broadcasting from the scene of a massive train derailment miles away, Jake saw him. In the grainy, chaotic footage, amidst the twisted metal and flashing emergency lights, was Leo. His clothes were the same. His hair was the same. And just as a rescue worker was about to be crushed by a shifting piece of wreckage, Leo, hand extended, his face a mask of intense concentration, caused the impossible to happen again, diverting the metal as if by an unseen will. The reporter, breathless, called it a miracle, an unknown force, the quiet hero. Jake stumbled back from the TV, dropping the sketchbook. He looked at the drawing on the floor, then out his window at the darkening sky. The next day, his younger sister, Lily, who had been diagnosed with a rare, aggressive form of muscular dystrophy, was scheduled for a crucial, high-risk surgery, a last resort to save her ability to walk. The doctors had given them slim hope. And Jake, who had just spent months tormenting the new kid, knew with a terrifying certainty that the only person who could truly help Lily was the one he had just pushed away. Jake spent a restless night, the image of Leo on the news flickering behind his eyelids, interspersed with Lily's fragile smile. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the shells shifting, then the twisted metal of the train wreck, and finally, the intricate drawings in Leo's sketchbook. He'd been a jerk, a complete and utter jerk, to the one person who might hold the key to his sister's future. Guilt gnawed at him, a raw, unfamiliar ache. The next morning, the house was a hive of quiet, anxious activity. His parents moved with hushed urgency, their faces etched with familiar weariness that had deepened over the past year. Lily, usually so full of vibrant energy despite her failing legs, was pale and subdued, picking at her breakfast. Her wheelchair sat by the kitchen table, a constant, painful reminder. "Ready, honey?" His mom's voice was a soft whisper as she knelt beside Lily. Lily nodded, her brown curls bouncing, just a bit nervous. Her eyes, usually bright, held a flicker of fear. Jake watched, a lump forming in his throat. He had to try. He had to. "Mom, Dad," he started, his voice rough. Can I go to school today? Just for a little bit. Before the hospital?" His dad, who was checking his watch, frowned. "Jake, we talk about this. You're coming with us. Lily needs you there." "I know," Jake insisted, a desperate edge to his voice. "And I will, but there's something I need to do first. Something important. It'll just take an hour, maybe less." He avoided their gaze, knowing how crazy this sounded. His mom exchanged a look with his dad. "Jake, what's going on?" "It's about the new kid. Leo," Jake blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. He can do things. Amazing things. I saw him. At school yesterday, and then on the news. He saved someone. I think he could help Lily." Silence. His parents stared at him, their expressions a mix of confusion and disbelief. "Jake, honey," his mom said gently. "That's sweet, but doctors are doing everything they can. We can't pin our hopes on something like that." "But you didn't see him," Jake argued, his voice rising. "He made those shells move. And the train wreck. He's not just some kid, Mom. He's different." His dad sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Son, I know you're scared for Lily. We all are. But we need to trust the professionals." "Please," Jake pleaded, his desperation overriding his usual pride. "Just let me try. If it doesn't work, I'll come straight to the hospital. I promise." Seeing the raw anguish in his eyes, and perhaps a flicker of a wild, improbable hope they hadn't allowed themselves to feel, his mom finally nodded. "Fine. 1 hour, Jake. And then you are at that hospital. No excuses." Northwood Middle School on a Saturday morning was a ghost town, the usual cacophony replaced by an eerie silence. Jake paced the empty halls, his heart thumping. Where would Leo be? He usually sat on that bench by the emergency exit, but it was empty now. Jake checked the library, the empty classrooms. Nothing. He felt a wave of crushing disappointment. He was too late. He'd messed this up just like he always did. He was about to give up when he heard a faint, rhythmic tapping sound coming from the school's rarely used outdoor garden, a small, overgrown patch behind the science wing. Jake walked hesitantly around the corner and stopped. Leo was there, kneeling by a wilting rose bush. He wasn't drawing. Instead, he held his hands a few inches above the parched soil, his brow furrowed in concentration. The tapping sound was his finger, gently, almost imperceptibly, nudging a tiny, almost invisible tremor in the ground. As Jake watched, a faint, iridescent shimmer, like heat rising off the pavement on a summer day, seemed to coalesce around Leo's hands and extend into the earth. Then, slowly, unbelievably, the rose bush, its leaves brown and brittle just moments before, began to deepen in color. A tiny new bud, no bigger than a fingernail, swelled and unfurled, its petals a soft, vibrant pink. Leo sighed, a quiet, almost exhausted sound, and leaned back on his heels, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. He didn't seem to notice Jake at first. "Leo!" Jake's voice was a hoarse whisper. Leo startled, his head snapping up, his eyes, usually downcast, were wide with surprise, then a flicker of annoyance. He quickly pulled his hands away from the plant, the shimmer vanishing. "What do you want, Miller?" Leo's voice was flat, devoid of its usual tremor. The dismissal stung, a reminder of every cutting remark Jake had ever thrown his way. Jake swallowed hard. I saw you. On the news." He gestured vaguely toward the rose bush. "And I saw that." He took a hesitant step closer. What was that?" Leo looked down at his hands, then at the now thriving rose. "Just helping along," he mumbled, his voice quiet again. "Helping it along?" Jake scoffed, a nervous laugh escaping him. "Leo, you just brought a dead plant back to life. On the news, you moved a train car. What is that?" Leo slowly met Jake's gaze, his expression unreadable. I can feel things, the way things connect, the energy in them, and sometimes I can nudge it, redirect it." He paused, a strange sadness in his eyes. "It's not magic, Miller. It's just listening." Jake took a deep breath. "My sister, Lily. She has muscular dystrophy. She's getting surgery today. It's really bad, Leo. The doctors say she might never walk again." He clenched his fists, his voice thick with uncharacteristic emotion. "I saw what you did yesterday. At school, for that worker. And on the news. I know I've been a jerk to you. The biggest jerk. But please, Leo, please, can you help her? Just listen to her, maybe?" Leo looked at him, a long, searching gaze that seemed to peel back every layer of Jake's bravado. He saw the genuine plea, the fear for his sister, the uncharacteristic vulnerability. The anger in Leo's eyes softened, replaced by that familiar, quiet stillness. "Muscular dystrophy," Leo repeated softly, his gaze drifting toward the school building, then beyond it, as if seeing something Jake couldn't. "It's a different kind of listening. Her muscles, they're forgetting their song." He paused, his gaze fixed on the distance. I can try, but it won't be like the train. It takes time, and she has to want to remember." Jake felt a surge of desperate hope. "She does, Leo. She wants to more than anything. Please, come to the hospital with us." Leo looked at him, then back at the flourishing rose bush. A faint siren wailed in the distance, a stark reminder of the world's chaos outside their quiet corner. "There's something else, Miller," Leo said, his voice dropping to a low, urgent whisper. "Something a lot bigger than just Lily. I can feel it. It's coming. A disruption. A breaking. And it's heading this way. Towards the city. Towards the hospital." His eyes, usually so guarded, were wide with chilling certainty. "I don't know what it is yet, but I know we're going to need to be ready." Jake's initial surge of relief at Leo's agreement was instantly doused by the boy's ominous warning. "What are you talking about? What's coming?" he demanded, his voice tight with a fresh wave of fear. Leo looked past him, his gaze fixed on something unseen. A shift, a rupture in the flow, like a fault line opening, but in the air, in the connections between things. He finally met Jake's eyes, and for the first time, Jake saw a flicker of genuine fear in them. It's been building. Small tremors. The squirrel yesterday, the train, those were just echoes. It's getting closer, and it's big enough to touch everyone in the city. Before Jake could press for more, his phone buzzed. It was his dad. "Jake, where are you? We're leaving for the hospital in 10 minutes. "I have to go," Jake said, his voice urgent. "Lily's waiting." He turned to Leo, a desperate plea in his eyes. "Please, Leo, come with me. Just be there. Even if you can't help her, maybe you can tell us more about this other thing." Leo hesitated, glancing at the newly bloomed rose. I don't like crowds or loud places. It's different now." Jake pushed, his mind racing. "The news. Everyone knows about you. They might even be looking for you." He knew it was a cheap shot, but he was desperate. A flicker of something, resignation perhaps, or a new kind of resolve, crossed Leo's face. "Fine," he said, his voice barely audible. "But we go my way." The drive to the children's hospital was a blur of nervous anticipation for Jake. Leo sat in the passenger seat, unusually quiet, his eyes scanning the city skyline, as if searching for something invisible. Jake's parents, though skeptical, had been too preoccupied with Lily to question Leo's presence much, beyond a few wary glances. Inside the hospital, the air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and hushed whispers. Lily was already being prepped. A nurse, her face kind but tired, explained the final steps. "We're just about ready to take her to surgery, honey. She'll be wheeled down any minute now." Jake stood by Lily's bed, holding her small, trembling hand. "It's going to be okay, Lil," he whispered, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. Leo stood a respectful distance away, his hands in his pockets, his gaze sweeping the bustling hallway, then settling on Lily. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer, like heat haze, seemed to emanate from his hands, but no one else noticed it. Just then, a wave of tremors hit. Not the earth-shaking kind, but something deeper, more unsettling. The fluorescent lights flickered erratically. The gentle hum of medical equipment faltered, and a low, guttural groan echoed to the hospital's ventilation system. Alarms began to chirp faintly in the distance. Panic rippled through the hall. Nurses exchanged alarmed glances. Doctors checked monitors with urgency. What was that? Jake's mom clutched his arm. Leo stepped forward, his eyes wide and fixed on a large digital clock hanging over the nurse's station. The time began to skip, then reverse, then jump forward erratically. "It's starting," he breathed, his voice barely audible. "The disruption. It's here." Suddenly, the hospital's PA system crackled to life, distorted and garbled. A voice, laced with static, began to issue an evacuation order, but it was cut short by a piercing, high-pitched whine that vibrated through the very bones of the building. Monitors went dark. The soft hum of life support machines died. Lily, who had been listening to the nurse, suddenly cried out, "My legs. I can't feel them at all." Her face contorted in a silent scream of pain and terror. Jake's mom gasped, rushing to her side. "Lily, what's wrong?" A terrifying groan ripped through the hospital, deeper and louder this time, like the building itself was in agony. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling tiles. Dust rained down. Outside, through the large lobby windows, the city lights flickered and died, plunging the skyline into an ominous darkness. Then, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of emergency generators kicked in, bathing the hospital in a harsh, emergency glow. But the light revealed something else. Just beyond the hospital's glass doors, the street was chaos. Cars had stalled, their engines dead. Streetlights blinked out, and in the distance, a large, dark mass seemed to be coalescing in the air, a swirling vortex of indistinct energy, pulsing with an unnatural light. It was growing, rapidly, Leo moved without a word. He placed his hands gently on Lily's knees, and the soft shimmer around him intensified, becoming faintly visible, almost like heat rising from warm pavement. Lily's eyes, wide with fear, locked onto his. "It's okay," Leo said, his voice calm amidst the growing chaos. "Your legs, remember. They're just scared. We need to remind them." As Leo concentrated, his face a mass of intense focus, the swirling energy vortex outside the hospital swelled, pulsing with a deep, hungry thrum. A low, resonant frequency began to build, vibrating through the very foundation of the building, causing the remaining lights to flicker violently. "Leo, what is that thing?" Jake yelled, pointing at the monstrous vortex outside. "It's heading right for us." Leo didn't look up. "It's a fracture," he gasped, his voice strained. "A tear in the very fabric of everything. It feeds on stillness, on disconnection." His hands glowed brighter on Lily's legs. "And the hospital, it's like a beacon for it. So much fear, so much forgetting." He closed his eyes, his brow furrowed with immense effort. The emergency lights in Lily's room flickered, then dimmed, then died, plunging them into near darkness, illuminated only by the faint, eerie glow from Leo's hands. Suddenly, Lily gasped, a sharp intake of breath. I feel something. A tingle." But just as hope flickered, the main entrance doors of the hospital burst open with a deafening crash, revealing not just a dark vortex outside, but chilling figure emerging from its heart. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to drink the light, its form a shifting mosaic of shadow and static. It moved with an unnatural, gliding motion, its presence radiating a cold, profound emptiness. Leo's eyes snapped open, a look of pure dread on his face. He pulled his hands from Lily's legs, the faint glow dying. "It's here," he whispered, his voice trembling for the first time. "It found us." The creature glided slowly, inexorably, towards the unconscious forms of Lily's doctors and nurses, who had succumbed to the sudden, overwhelming energy drain. Its mere presence seemed to suck the warmth, the life, from the air. "It needs to be stopped," Leo said, his voice regaining a strange, fierce resolve. He looked at Jake, his eyes burning with an unexpected intensity. "But I can't do both. I can't heal her and fight that. Not now." Jake stared at the approaching entity, then at Leo, then at his sister, helpless in her bed. He knew, with a horrifying clarity, that the bullied new kid, the quiet loner, was not just a healer, but the last line of defense. "What do we do?" Jake whispered, his heart hammering against his ribs. Leo's gaze flickered between the advancing shadow and Lily's fragile form. "You have to trust me, Miller," he said, his voice low and urgent, laced with a new kind of authority. "I need your help to fight it. But for Lily, for her to have any chance, we have to move her. Now. And we have to get her to a place where the connection, where the life is strongest." He pointed a trembling finger towards the now darkened city. The park. Jake's mind reeled. The creature from the vortex was closer now, its form rippling, seemingly absorbing the very light around it. The air grew heavy, cold. Yet, Leo was asking him to move Lily in a dying hospital and take her to a park? It was insane. But looking at Leo's resolute face, then at the advancing shadow, Jake knew he had no other choice. "The park?" Jake stammered, his voice laced with fear. "Harrington Park? Why?" "It's connected," Leo whispered, his eyes still fixed on the entity. "There's an old oak tree there. It hums. It has life, strength. It remembers." He turned to Lily, whose whimpers were growing fainter. "Her connection is almost gone. This place is pulling away." Jake's parents, paralyzed by fear and confusion, stared at the approaching shadow and the chaotic scene. Jake knew he couldn't rely on them right now. He had to act. "Okay," Jake said, his voice surprisingly steady. "How do we get her out of here?" The hospital was a maze of flickering emergency lights and eerie silence. The distant thrum of the vortex vibrated through the floor. Nurses and orderlies lay unconscious in the hallways, victims of the energy drain. Jake carefully unplugged Lily's fore and heart monitor, their screens now dark anyway. Leo was already at the foot of her bed, his gaze unwavering on the approaching shadow. "No time for the wheelchair," Leo said, his voice urgent. "It's too slow, and it carries the stillness of this place." Jake scooped Lily up, his arms trembling from fear more than exertion. She felt impossibly light, frail, her head lolled against his shoulder, her breathing shallow. "Be careful," his mom whispered, her voice barely a thread, but she made no move to stop him. "You go first," Leo instructed, his gaze sweeping the hallway. "Stay low. Avoid the direct path of that." He gestured vaguely at the rippling shadow. "I'll try to slow it down, redirect it." As Jake moved, cradling Lily, he glanced back. Leo stood rooted to the spot, his hands once again raised. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer began to coalesce around him, like a shield against the creeping coldness of the entity. The creature, seemingly drawn to the life force within the hospital, paused, its shadowy form wavering, as if encountering an unexpected resistance. Jake didn't wait. He ran, his sneakers squeaking on the slick floor, Lily a fragile weight in his arms. He navigated the darkened corridors, past the still forms of staff, their faces ashen. He burst through an emergency exit door, the cool night air hitting him like a shock. Outside, the city was a tapestry of stark silence and ominous darkness. Cars lay abandoned, their headlights off. The air was thick with a strange metallic tang. And rising above the skyline, visible from anywhere, was the enormous, pulsating vortex, now a sickening purple-black. It was a gaping maw in the sky, swallowing the city's energy. Jake ran, ignoring the stitch in his side, the growing fear in his chest. He clutched Lily tighter, her small body barely responding to his touch. He thought of Harrington Park, miles away. He thought of the small patch of green, the squeaking swings, the ancient oak tree. Was Leo right? Could a tree truly fight that? He found his car, a lucky break in the dead streets, and fumbled with the manual lock. He gently laid Lily in the back seat, securing her with a blanket, then jumped into the driver's seat. The engine coughed, then sputtered, then died. The city was truly dead. No power, no engines. Panic threatened to overwhelm him. He slammed his fist on the steering wheel. No, no, no. Suddenly, a tap on his window. Leo. He was breathing hard, a thin trickle of blood from his nose. "It's too strong for me to hold for long," he gasped, his voice strained. "We have to move fast in the car." He looked at the dead engine, then at Jake. "Open the hood." Jake scrambled out, popped the hood. Leo peered into the silent machinery, his face etched with intense concentration. He placed both hands on the engine block, closed his eyes. The subtle shimmer returned, brighter this time, like moonlight caught in a spiderweb. Jake felt a strange hum beneath his fingers, a faint warmth radiating from the metal. Then the engine gave a cough, then another, and finally roared to life. "Get in," Leo commanded, his voice weak. "Drive. And don't stop. It's coming right behind us." Jake didn't question it. He threw the car into gear, the tires squealing as he sped out of the hospital parking lot, leaving behind the eerie, silent chaos. In his rear-view mirror, through the shattered hospital doors, he saw the shadowy entity beginning to glide out into the street, a hungry void against the dying city lights. The drive was a nightmare. Jake sped through darkened streets, weaving around stalled cars, ignoring traffic laws that no longer seemed to apply. The vortex in the sky pulsed, its low thrum growing louder, more insistent. He could feel its cold presence, a heavy cloak settling over the city. In the back seat, Lily coughed weakly. Jake glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. Her face was ashen, her lips tinged blue. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "She's fading, Leo," he choked out. "She's really fading." Leo sat hunched in the passenger seat, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. A faint shimmer still surrounded him, a desperate attempt to ward off the encroaching stillness. "Hold on, Lily," he whispered, as if she could hear him. "Hold on to the memory of the light." As they neared Harrington Park, the vortex in the sky seemed to intensify, its low hum escalating into a deafening roar. The very air around them crackled with static. The car lurched, its engine sputtering as if struggling against an invisible current. We're almost there, Jake yelled, gripping the wheel. He could see the faint outline of the park through the gloom, the dark silhouette of the ancient oak tree a beacon in the oppressive darkness. Just as they reached the park entrance, the car died again, the engine giving a final, wheezing cough. The vortex in the sky pulsed violently, and the shadowy entity from the hospital, now impossibly large and radiating an unbearable cold, loomed in the distance, gaining on them. "Get her out!" Leo yelled, his voice suddenly strong despite his exhaustion. "Take her to the oak tree. Now!" Jake fumbled with the door handle, flung it open, and scooped Lily out of the car. He ran, stumbling over the uneven grass, toward the ancient oak tree, its branches spreading like welcoming arms against the menacing sky. The air around the tree felt different, warmer, alive. He reached the tree, its rough bark a solid comfort against his back. He laid Lily gently on the grass, her breath barely a whisper. The shadowy entity from a vortex was closer now, its chilling presence filling the park. Leo stood by the car, facing the approaching void, his arms outstretched. The shimmer around him flared. A desperate last stand. "You want stillness?" he screamed, his voice echoing in the dead silence. "You won't find it here. Not in this park. Not in this city." The vortex roared, and from its depths 1,000 unseen tendrils of cold energy shot towards Leo, swirling around him, trying to crush him, to snuff out his light. Jake watched in horror, clutching Lily. He felt her small hand twitch. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at him, then at Leo, then at the monstrous shadow. "Jake," she whispered, her voice barely audible. My legs, they feel like they're dancing." Jake looked down at her. Her small legs, which had been motionless for so long, were twitching a faint, rhythmic tremor. It was barely perceptible, but it was there. A spark, a memory. But the vortex roared again, and Leo cried out, his shimmering shield flickering, threatening to collapse under the onslaught. The shadowy entity lunged, a silent predator. Jake knew, with a horrifying certainty, that Leo couldn't hold it back much longer. He looked at his sister, whose legs were still dancing faintly, a flicker of life in the overwhelming darkness. He looked at the ancient oak tree, its strong roots gripping the earth, radiating a silent strength. And then he looked at the approaching horror. He had bullied Leo. He had been a terrible person. But Leo was here, fighting for them, fighting for Lily. And Jake knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the only way to save Lily and perhaps the entire city was to help Leo fight something that defied all reason. The monstrous shadow from the vortex loomed over Leo, its form solidifying into a terrifying, skeletal figure of pure emptiness. The air around it hummed with a draining cold, sucking the life from the very grass. Leo's shimmering shield flickered, moments from collapsing. "No!" Jake screamed, clutching Lily closer to the rough bark of the oak tree. Her faint leg tremors were still there, a tiny defiance against the creeping stillness, a testament to Leo's touch. Leo swayed, his face pale, but his eyes burned with a fierce determination. "It feeds on fear, on disconnection," he yelled, his voice strained. "It wants us to forget." Jake looked from Leo, who was visibly weakening, to the ancient oak tree. He felt the subtle hum of life radiating from its massive trunk, a warmth in the encroaching cold. He remembered Leo's words. The park, it's connected. The old oak tree, it hums. It has a life, strength. It remembers. A desperate idea, born of terror and a raw, unyielding love for his sister, flared in Jake's mind. If the creature fed on disconnection, maybe connection could fight it. And the strongest connection he knew was the one between him and Lily, and the unexpected, fragile bond forming with Leo. The tree, Jake yelled, his voice cracking. "Leo, the tree, it's radiating something." Leo, nearly overwhelmed by the entity, seemed to hear him. He glanced at the oak, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. The entity, sensing its victory, lunged, its shadowy claws reaching for Leo. "Connect!" Jake screamed, releasing Lily and pressing his own hands against the rough bark of the oak. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to remember every detail of Leo's quiet movements, the way his hands had shimmered, the calm concentration. He pictured the intricate energy patterns from Leo's sketchbook. He focused on the warmth of the tree, on the desperate, persistent hope in Lily's faint twitching legs. He reached for something he didn't understand, a connection that felt as vast and ancient as the tree itself. And then a surge, not a bright light, but a deep, vibrant hum that resonated from the tree, through Jake's hands and into the earth. It wasn't Leo's shimmering energy, but something else entirely, a raw, untamed force of life. The shadowy entity recoiled, hissing, its form wavering. The draining cold receded, replaced by a wave of warmth emanating from the tree. Leo, seeing the change, pressed his own hand against the tree's bark, his eyes still fixed on the creature. "It's the heart!" he gasped, his voice strengthening. "The memory of life. This tree, it's a conduit." Together, they channeled it. Jake, pushing past his fear, held his focus, feeling the immense, unwavering power of the ancient oak flowing through him. Leo, exhausted but resolute, guided the raw energy, shaping it with his innate connection to the world's hidden currents. The tree itself seemed to respond, its branches rustling, its leaves glowed with a faint, verdant light. The creature shrieked, a sound that ripped through the quiet night, a sound of pure agony. It writhed, trying to consume the life force, but it was too strong, too pure. The vortex in the sky, which had seemed so solid, began to unravel, its purple-black depths fracturing, revealing glimpses of the starlit sky beyond. With a final, desperate roar, the shadowy entity imploded, not in a bang, but in a silent implosion, shrinking inward until it vanished completely, leaving behind only the cold night air and the lingering scent of ozone. The vortex above them dispersed, the stars winking back into existence. Silence fell, absolute and profound. The city lights flickered back on, one by one, a slow, hesitant breath of life returning. The hum of emergency generators faded, replaced by the distant wail of sirens, now purposeful and clear. Jake collapsed against the tree, gasping for breath, his hands aching. Leo sank to the grass beside him, trembling, a thin trickle of blood from his nose again. Lily stirred. Jake looked down. Her eyes were open, wide and clear, and a small, tentative smile played on her lips. She moved her left foot, then her right. Not just a twitch, but a deliberate, wiggling motion. Her legs, for the first time in months, felt hers. "Jake," she whispered, her voice stronger. "My legs, they remembered." Jake felt tears welling in his eyes. He hugged her close, his relief so profound it felt like a physical weight lifting from his chest. Sirens grew louder, closer. Flashing lights painted the park's edges. People, stirring from their energy-induced stupor, began to emerge, confused but safe. A news helicopter, its rotors thudding, appeared in the sky, heading toward the area of the vanished vortex. Leo stirred. Pushing himself up, he looked at Jake, his gaze holding a new depth. We did it, Miller. Together." Jake nodded, unable to speak, still holding Lily. Over the next few weeks, the city slowly recovered. Explanations for the blackout of May 25th ranged from solar flares to mass hysteria, but no one could fully account for mysterious energy drain or the sudden restoration of power. Only a few scattered, grainy phone videos of Leo's impossible feats circulated online, quickly dismissed as hoaxes. Harrington Park became a quiet sanctuary. Lily, under Leo's gentle guidance, began her slow, arduous journey of healing, not with machines, but with warm rice packs, rubber bands, and Leo's quiet insistence that her muscles remembered their song. Jake was always there now, helping, learning, a silent student to Leo's improbable wisdom. He learned to feel the subtle energies, to listen to the body's quiet signals. He learned to be patient, and he learned what it meant to truly connect. Their quiet sessions didn't stay secret for long. A nurse from the Children's Medical Center, walking her dog, saw Lily taking her first shaky steps under the oak tree, aided by Jake and the quiet boy with the sketchbook. Word spread. Soon, other families, desperate for hope, began to show up. A young boy with a walker, a girl recovering from a stroke, parents with hopeful eyes. Leo, true to his nature, didn't seek attention. He still wore his oversized clothes, still carried his worn sketchbook. But now he wasn't alone. He had Jake, a loyal protector and a newfound friend, and Lily, who reminded him daily of the power of connection. And the park, once a forgotten patch of green, became a vibrant hub of quiet miracles, a testament to the fact that the most extraordinary healing often came from the most unexpected places. Guided by a boy who simply knew how to listen. There are people in this world who might not have fancy degrees, shiny resumes, or a perfect past, but they carry something far more valuable: heart, grit, and a reason to keep showing up. Sometimes the most broken people are the ones holding the tools to help others heal. As for the shadowy entity, the vortex, and the fracture in reality, Leo sometimes still felt its echoes. A cold spot on a warm day, a faint flicker in the corner of his eye. He knew the world had been touched by something vast and unknown. He also knew that what had happened was just a glimpse, a warning. And deep down, in the quietest corners of his mind, Leo understood that the balance had only just begun to shift. The world had seen its first crack, but was far from healed. And the true fight was yet to come. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that matter. And let's keep the conversation going.